Hi members, my name is S.L.Ager and I'm the author of the Cadwallader the Quests trilogy and their supporting workbooks, and you can see those behind me there. I'd like to welcome you to our fairly new segment, Tutor Focus, and I'd like to thank Agnes for founding this brilliant group. It's the 11 plus ISEB, SATS, GCSE and A-level resource group, and thank goodness I got that right this time because I always get it wrong. And it's a section where I get the opportunity to talk to some of the best tutors in the business so that you, the members, can get to know them better. And today I'm thrilled to be here with Mohi Ahmed of Maths Singapore Academy. So hi, how are you, Mohi?
Hi there, Sheena. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I didn't watch the football last night because I couldn't. But I did make the mistake of coming down when they just finished the penalty shootout, and I took one look at Gareth Southgate's face and left the room. So, but I'm trying to get over it now, and I think you're a bit of a fan as well, so I'm sure you're probably feeling exactly the same way as me.
Definitely.
But anyway, let's get on to our lovely chat so that we can get to know about you and your business better, because I know you've not been an admin in Agnes's group for that long, but I
That's
know
right.
that she holds you in very, very, very high regard. Now,
That's nice.
you know, I don't do maths, so so this is enlightening for me as well. So,
We all do maths, Sheena. We all do maths.
oh,
We have to.
I can just about add up two and two. No, anyway, so we've said that you're a maths tutor. So what specialty in maths do you tutor, if any, and where are you guys based?
Okay, great. Well, we're called Singapore Maths Academy for a reason. That's because we have a certain style of teaching. Our pedagogy, our style of teaching is from Singapore. And Singapore have been the leading nation in the world for maths education for the last 30 years now. So it's a long time to be leading anything. And so myself, I've got a maths background. I was trained PGCE maths about 16, 17 years ago now. And then I became head of maths and so forth, and head teacher as well at one point. But then when I left my headship, I became a maths consultant, and I train teachers now for a living. And as part of that, I realized that there's a big gap in the marketplace where problem solving and visualization, two of the foundations of Singapore maths, isn't really taking place in a tutoring setting. So what's happening is a lot of tutors, some of them are math specialists, some of them aren't. They don't really know how to get the most out of children when it comes to problem solving, using techniques found in not just in Singapore, but all around the world, which really allows children that are maybe not the strongest in maths, but they're allowed to actually access the question and have a really good attempt at the question, and in most cases, answer the question correctly. And
Wow,
because
that's really interesting. Sorry, continue because I
Yeah, and
interrupted
because
there.
there was a gap in the market, and I was specializing in this with teachers all across England and now internationally, I felt it was the perfect time to kind of start something up, which hopefully has a major impact in England and across, so that we can not only get those children that are struggling in maths, but those who are excelling in maths but can't get to that next level in problem solving, just to give them a really cutting edge technique so that they can access those questions.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. And you've kind of sort of half answered my next question, but not completely. But I did want to point out, I didn't know that you'd been I hate to say this, proper teacher and even a headmaster. I mean, that's really impressive. So, you know, it's good to know. But my next question is why and how did you become a tutor? You've kind of covered that, but maybe there's just a little bit more you want
Yeah.
to add.
So, 17 years ago, when you become a maths teacher, maths, English, science are, very much in demand. I was a secondary maths teacher at first. And so because it was such in demand, and I was still quite young and single and had plenty of time in my hand, I wanted to kind of support others. So initially, the first time I started tutoring was actually for a center, which is a charitable center. I think it was called, I can't remember the name of it actually, but it was such a long time ago, and I'm an old man now. But it was just to support local children that were struggling in maths. And
Okay.
that's when I first got into and tutoring. in small groups. And then that kind of evolved into tutoring one-to-one as well.
And you've almost covered a little bit of my third question as well, but again, I think you could probably go into a little bit more depth. What makes your tuition services different from others? So you've kind of
Yeah.
touched on it, but
Yeah,
maybe.
that's true. I mean, the name itself, I'm sure, is very unique. I don't think anyone's got Singapore attached to their tuition center. But myself included, I've been trained by some of the lead experts in Singapore maths from Singapore directly after my PGCE. And so we've got the likes of Dr. Yip Ban Ha, who's like known as like a rock star of maths education, believe it or not. And anyone that goes to his conferences knows that when you come out of them, you think, wow, that's how I want to teach maths. And so I want to give that feeling to all the teachers I train. And thankfully, we've got a successful business in doing that, apart from Singapore Maths Academy. And so with Singapore Maths Academy, I want that feeling for my children that we take on. I want them to feel like they can actually, excel in maths. And these are just nice words to hear, but how do we do that is a key question. And the approach that we use is something called, one of the approaches we use, something called a CPA approach, which is a concrete pictorial abstract approach. It's from research done by someone called Jerome Bruner from America in the early 60s or mid 60s. And basically what he says is that the best way to understand something new is to start off using concrete materials before moving on to pictorial representation, before going on to the abstract. And so an example of this would be like when we have children, when they're really small and babies really, we start talking to them a lot, right? But when we talk to them, if we give them a toy, like a toy car, for example, we say, here's your car. Do you want this car? We keep saying the word car, car, car until one day something magical happens when they point and say car, right? And then we get really happy about that. And so that's the concrete phase. We're playing with a toy car and we keep saying car, 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 car until they get it. And then they say car. And then what's the next step? Oh, we start reading them books a lot more, right? Like you've got behind you, beautiful books. And then we say, oh, look at that. What do you think that is? A picture of a car. And they realize from the concrete, they've now moved on to the pictorial representation. And the final stage in that kind of circle is the abstract, when they have beautiful books like the ones behind you, where they can start reading the words. CAR is car. That's the concrete to pictorial to abstract approach that Jerome Bruner mentions in his research. And so Singapore started using that in the early 80s, as well as other research, to kind of excel the education system. So Singapore in the 80s, mid 80s, early 80s, they were average or below average in the education system. But then after about 10 years of change in the curriculum, they became the lead experts in maths education. And so our uniqueness is from using research. So we're research-based tuition center. We don't just think, oh, Mohi thinks this is great, let's just do this. We actually research what is going on, what is good for our children, what's going to be the best approach, how do we get the most of our children, and what does the research say? So from that research, we then move on to making sure this is the right approach for our children. And we use the best resources that follow those research papers that we follow. And then we see the results. So a lot of our children, from initially being okay at maths, or sometimes even weak at maths, they've suddenly, after about 6 months to a year of tuitioning, they've suddenly become one of the lead people in their classrooms in maths. So we've seen that so often.
I can actually remember sitting in my maths lessons, and probably I would have been in the second year of secondary school, so that's now year 8.
Yeah.
And I can remember actually realizing that I did not understand how to apply what he was talking about to the real world. Therefore, I could not grasp it because that's how I work.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because yesterday I was walking the dog with Jude. That's my son who's in year 9. And he said, let's walk that way along the lake and we'll go that way. And I said, no, I don't want to go along the lake. It's muddy and it's quicker this way. And as we walked, he said, Mum, Pythagoras. And he told me, he said, this is maths. And he proved to me that we were going in a triangle and that the way he'd said was the quickest. And that would be and as simple as,
Yeah.
pizza and fractions,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and I didn't have that. This because you said you're old. No, you're not. I am. And teaching was so different in the early 70s. And I just remember with English and um, geography and history, it was tangible. I could do it. And I'm sure there's so many kids out there, and
Yeah.
your teaching would have been perfect for me because I
Yeah.
would have been able, you know, when the kids were little, I used Lego blocks and things so that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
obviously I could do the very simple stuff, but just so they had something to touch.
Course, yeah.
So,
That's a really important part, the concrete part, you know.
mm,
A lot of teachers, not just in England now, all around the world, they are understanding this, primary teachers, they're understanding that sometimes we're rushing things and instead slow it down and actually visualize and have a more concrete aspect, you know, even fractions. So you mentioned cake. So we use like paper like this, a simple thing, right? But we use paper, and it's so much easier. And it's funny that you said, you know, you'd really benefit from this kind of teaching.
yes, I,
When I train teachers, one of pretty much every single training session I deliver, and this is all across the world, right? So the last training session I did internationally, just before the lockdown, was in Dubai, and so anywhere I've gone, they've said, you know what? If only I had this when I was growing up, because then I would have aced maths. It makes
mean,
so much
it's
more
like
sense.
if you cannot, so I can remember not being able to see a fraction and struggling at a young age to understand that when the number got bigger, the piece got smaller.
Yeah.
But if somebody had shown that to
Yeah.
me,
Oh, yeah.
I could have
Makes
understood it.
sense.
And it's so
Yeah.
simple. And
Yeah.
so I wholeheartedly agree. And again, you've pretty much covered the next question, but I'm gonna point this to you personally. Okay. So
Sure.
what is your greatest tutoring strength?
Wow, that's a great great question. I mean, we've got a whole team of tutors at Singapore Maths Academy, and I think all of our strengths is the fact that we don't give up on our children, but we're also very realistic. We tell our parents that this should be our goal for your child. Every child is different, and it's so important that we realize every child is different, because you've given your example of your kind of past and your childhood and learning maths. You know, my childhood, believe it or not, even though I'm a maths expert and or I've been told I'm a maths expert, and I train teachers on maths education from primary and secondary, even though I've got a background in that, and I did really well in my GCSEs and I chose A-level maths, you'd be shocked to find that, you know, when I tell parents and teachers this, that I was rubbish at maths, you know, up until year 8, end of year 8. And I was so poor, I was really weak in maths. You know, I was probably one of the bottom, 5 in the year. But something happened to me in the summer holidays after year 8, and I found a book at home. It's probably my sister's book, who just completed her GCSEs, and I found it at home, and it had examples. So I saw it every day for summer holidays. I don't know why, for about half an hour every day. You know, I would spend half an hour just reading the example, then trying to exercise out. And GCSE books have the answers at the back, and then checking my answers. And I realized, actually, you know what? I'm getting it right. Somehow I'm understanding the example when no one's around, there's no noise. I can understand the example. I can actually do the exercise, and I can check my answers, and I'm getting it right 95% of the times, right? And so I gained every day. I was doing that for the whole of summer holidays. So I gained a lot of confidence from that. And then at the beginning of year 9, what happened was we had an assessment, our first assessment, and I was second best in the year after just going through it myself. And I felt so empowered, you know,
What
by
what an amazing confidence booster for
yeah, oh
you.
yeah, believe me. Do you know another confidence booster from that same year, year 9, was I was next to my friend called Gavin. You know, we were like really tight, you know, very close friends. And Gavin Spencer, if he's ever listening, I doubt he is. But yeah, he was next to me, and I remember the teacher wrote bid maths on the board, right? And he didn't explain to us what it was. He just wrote it down. And I said to Gavin, this is what it means, right? Brackets, indices, division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction, right? And so Gavin just ignored me, like, you're talking rubbish here. You don't know what you're not good at maths, right? You know, we're in the same boat here, right? So And then the teacher said exactly the word for word what I said. And Gavin just looked at me like, what happened there? You know? And so from that point on, I thought, wow, it feels great to actually understand math before the teacher even explains anything. And it just kind of went, upward trend, from there. And so you asked me like, what's one of our strengths, in tutoring? And I think from my experience, that was a great experience. Don't get me wrong. Like the kind of where I came from, like I was weak in maths, really weak, but then I got an A in maths GCSE at the end, right? And so it changed quite drastically from me, in space of 3 years. And I think, looking at that example is great, but it doesn't, apart from having confidence and belief in my pupils, it doesn't help me much, apart from, having that belief. But what does help me a lot is a Singapore maths approach, which not many, if any, other centers have. And what the reason I say that is because we've seen children that are struggling maths using those techniques we use, they've suddenly become so strong in maths. And I can remember so many examples of that. As you mentioned, that example of, a fifth is a larger fraction than a tenth. And because we use a concrete from year 2, year 3, children in year 2 are telling me this. That, oh, I can see that, a fifth is going to be a bigger piece than a tenth. And so and the thing is, one thing with us is we don't just say, oh, great. We say, why? So in Singapore, we have this kind of Singapore approach has this belief that we ask why before how. So it's not just about how you do something, it's about why it works. And so that question, why, and the child said, well, if I had a cake, I would want the bigger piece, which is going to be the 5 pieces, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Rather than the 10 pieces, which is going to be smaller, it's going to be half the size.
And again, that's the concrete, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. When children see it, so some of our parents that are listening to this might think, oh, does that mean that Singapore maths is only for the weaker children? Have a think about that question, right? Because you might think concrete's only for weak children, but it's not, because what the approach we mentioned earlier, the CPA approach, the objective is to get to the abstract. It's
Yes.
not to keep them on the concrete, is to get to the abstract. But when you get to the abstract, they understand what they're doing.
Yes.
Not just memorize, but
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah,
And
because
so,
I think with maths as well, right the way through my very short maths career, um, to me, all I did was learn things to
yeah,
get the mark. I didn't have a clue why I was doing it. I was just following. I wrote,
exactly.
I did this to get this to get this so that it got a tick. And
Right.
that is so wrong. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, next question. What is your favorite part of tutoring?
I think any tutor would probably have to be the same, which is to see the growth in children. If even if they come to us strong, like I remember a child that came to us at the end of year 5, and the parent just wanted some 11 plus boost, I suppose, for the child in maths, and they just decided a couple of months ago that they're going to put them through 11 plus, so they haven't had much or any tuition at all, and the child was a strong mathematician anyway. But then when we start looking at really challenging problem solving questions, which was something that we specialize in, they were struggling. And so when we looked at the approaches we use, including the bar model approach, which is now internationally known, um, they started to understand the questions really quickly and without much effort from me. As soon as I kind of introduced that strategy, they were just flying with those questions. And it was incredible to see. So not just those children that are struggling and they become amazing at maths, but also those children that are quite strong at maths, but they're still finding problem solving their weakness.
Yeah.
And so seeing those children just not just improve in maths, but their smiles on their faces when they're just getting it and just thinking, wow, how am I even doing this? My teacher, they would normally, actually, a lot of our children would say, my teacher, I asked how to do this and she couldn't do it, or he couldn't do it. And so imagine our children aged, in year groups 3, 4, 5, 6, they can do maths that their teachers in school are struggling with,
Yes.
and that's really empowering.
Imagine that's quite.
Yeah. Yeah,
I was
teachers
gonna
might
say,
not like us much.
I was
But
gonna say empowering, but it's probably quite awkward for the teachers.
for the teachers, yeah.
And before we kind of wrap up, we ask all tutors this before we close, and I'm afraid that you are only allowed one,
Yeah.
Mohi, and you can apply this to any part of your teaching sort of business
Yeah.
career. What is your one top tip for parents?
Yeah.
If you could tell us maybe which age you're
Yeah.
referring to,
Yeah,
or
of course. I think this could be from ages early as age 3 to all the way to age around about 13, 12, 13, right? So about year 8, year 9. And that's to use visualization. And for parents that they might not understand what I mean by that, so I'll explain. So visualization is kind of like trying to see maths. Okay, what we say is seeing maths. So when we teach our children maths from an early age, even with basic number work, get them to see maths. And so we use things like 10 frames, egg boxes, believe it or not, from an early age to see the maths. All the way to year 3, 4, 5, we use paper like this to see fractions. So when we have like a quarter at 3/4, they can see a quarter and 3/4 here, and they can, answer your questions. And even equivalent fractions. If we think about it, if we fold this paper in half, I'll show you right now, actually, live session here, right? So we fold this paper in half, and you can see just about 2 halves, right? Can you start, Sheena?
Yep.
You can see 2 halves.
Yeah.
Guess what? If I fold it again, Sheena, it's not halves anymore, is it? It's going to be quarters. We can see 4 quarters, right? But also, Sheena, can you see halves in here as well?
Probably not.
Huh? You can see the half here again, right?
Yeah.
How many quarters can you see? You can see 2 quarters.
Yeah.
Look at that. 2 quarters is equivalent to
Yeah.
1 half. And so visualization is getting children to see the maths, not just writing it down on the abstract, but when they see the maths, they get to understand it. When they understand the maths, when you start writing it down without any pictures or any concrete, they're going to excel. They're going to be brilliant. And so the parents,
I think it's critical that
Yeah.
visualization.
Definitely.
Absolutely critical, because like I said, I do remember sitting there thinking, what do I apply this to?
Yeah.
And I think it's really,
If you think about it, forget the pictures now. Imagine they don't exist. They've gone, right? And including the concrete. If we just wrote down a quarter equals, something, right? How many kids would get that, right? Or half equals 2 quarters. How many kids would get that?
not many.
They won't. I mean, the clever kids, they'll kind of like extract certain things they're saying, and they'll get it in other ways. They'll get there somehow. But those children that are clever, but they might not be able to understand just words and writing.
Yeah.
They are, as clever as those other kids, but they just haven't grasped it yet. And if we give up,
well, there's one, before we wrap, there's one thing I'd like to sort of pick out that you said, which is, to me, I'm a real believer in growth mindset. I personally, I mean, I'm sure some people are born clever, but I think it's much more than that. It's opportunity, it's environment. And it goes back to what you said. You thought you weren't very good at maths, yet look what you did over 6 weeks. And I mean, hats off, because you did that yourself. Not many kids would do that, but I think that's the perfect, it's when I see parents come to me and say, is my child clever enough to pass the 11 plus? And my attitude is, yes, I think with the right guidance, any child can pass the 11 plus. So I kind of, I just wanted to pull on that point.
So I should explain as well. When I say clever, I should go like this, right?
Yes.
So when I said clever, also because in my training we never use this sort of kind of language, right? But I know parents in tuition speak, they always ask these questions like, are they clever enough? And you're absolutely right. Every child, and that's why on our homepage on Singapore Maths Academy, one of the first statements we write is we believe that every child can ace maths.
Yes.
Every child. And we have to be patient with them. We have to realize that not every child has the same trajectory. It's not going to be like this for every child. I was like this and then like that. And so it's the case. And I remember this deputy head teacher, she sent her son to us for some tuitioning. This is when we had a base in Leighton before the lockdown. And her son was in year 11 at that stage. So GCSE year, he was at a drama school, doing really well in most subjects, but he wasn't getting on with his maths teacher, let's say, right? Which happens quite often, actually, not just maths, but other subjects, right? And so when we got him in, and he was a group session, he was actually a really intelligent young man, and he had a very low confidence about his maths and probably a few other things as well. So we built that up really well. And I remember one lesson that I actually taught him in that lesson, and it was where the topic doesn't matter, but one of the questions we ask our children in a lot of our lessons is how many different ways. Okay, so not just answer this question, but how many different ways can you answer this question, right? So really trying to think outside the box sometimes. And so when we asked that question, he had about 3 or 4 ways, right? And I asked everyone, like, what was the benefit of that? Did anyone benefit from me asking that question, or was it just because we've got the same answer then anyway, whatever, how many ever many ways you have? And he said, yeah, actually, that really helped me, because at school, when I used to like look at other people's answers or the way they've done things, I used to think that's the only way. But I realize now, actually, there's different ways to getting there, you know? And just because they've chosen a different way, someone next to me, doesn't mean I'm doing it wrong. And for him, that was a big moment, and from that point onwards, he did, do really well. And when
That
he
was
came
his
to us,
aha moment.
yeah, it was definitely, yeah, because when he came to us, his school predicted him an E grade, right?
Oh,
At the end, he got a B.
oh,
Yeah.
brilliant.
So,
Brilliant.
yeah, so he did exceptionally well.
Well, that is a lovely note to finish on. So if you could tell us where we can find you, where we can find you online, if you've got any resources, a website, if you could let us know,
Yeah, of
and
course.
everybody can then come and find you,
Yeah.
because I almost feel like enrolling to see if you can help me.
Yeah, why? Do you know what? We get a few adults as well. Don't believe me. Well, we are, we're obviously everyone's online nowadays. So we've got our own website, singaporemathsacademy.co.uk. You can always go on there, check us out, and give us a message, and we'll get back to you. We've got our own Facebook page and Instagram page. We're on Twitter, but we're not as active. But Instagram, Facebook, we're there pretty much every day. So you can definitely get hold of us in that way. We've
And is
also
that
got what?
is that still Singapore Maths Academy on Facebook? Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. If you type that in Facebook, we should be there as
great.
well.
Yeah.
The first company there. And also on our website, we've got our mobile number. You can WhatsApp us, and we'll get back to you as well. We've got international students all across the world. We've had to reject a few from Australia because the time doesn't suit us and neither them.
Yeah.
But we've got kids from all over the world. So wherever you are, whether it's 11 plus or GCSE in Key Stage 3 maths, we're only maths focused. So we're specialists in that. We only have tutors and teachers that are qualified teachers, and also they're passionate about maths. So
Mohi,
whatever.
do you
Yeah.
go up to A level, or is
Um,
it?
we are thinking about it. We're up to GCSE. A level is one of the reasons we don't do A levels is really tricky to get outstanding A level tutors and teachers that know their stuff and are also loyal, so they stay with us. And that's why it's challenging to find the right teachers for A level.
Okay. I wanted to ask that question just to sort of get it out there that you're basically from year dot to
Yeah, year
GCSE.
two. Yeah, from year two we start our tuition, all the way to GCSE maths.
Okay, that's absolutely brilliant. And as I say, I know Agnes is kind of thrilled with your sort of level of expertise in the live that you did. So thanks again. Thanks to Agnes, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the group lots more.
Thank you, Agnes. It's been a brilliant time actually being admin of the group, because I'm learning lots of things as well from the other tutors.
Yeah.
Because you say you're not a maths person, I can say I'm not an English person.
Oh, well, you're doing really, really well. So thanks ever so much. And it's great to have you on board.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to talk to you.
You too.
Bye. Bye, folks. Bye.